The noon sun baked the dust of the parade ground until it shimmered like glass. The people of Coyote Bend had gathered because something was promised: entertainment, punishment, gossip, maybe all three. They had built the platform themselves out of splintered pine, and on it stood a girl who said nothing. She wore a plain cotton dress and her hair was braided in 2 ropes the color of crow feathers. Her wrists were bound with rawhide, not to display her, but because the sheriff claimed she had been caught stealing a horse. Most folks didn't believe it, but in a town that made its rules by shouting louder than its neighbor, belief didn't matter much. The sheriff talked too much, his voice booming as he waved a piece of paper that none of the crowd could read. He called it a contract of labor, a sentence for theft, a week's work on whoever would take responsibility for her. He called her the Apache girl, though she had a name, Ayanna, meaning eternal blossom, and though her hands trembled, her eyes were still. They fixed on the horizon beyond the roofs and the windmill, as if she could already see a way out. The townsfolk murmured. Some turned their heads away. The blacksmith spat into the dirt, his wife tugging his sleeve. The schoolteacher frowned, knowing the law was being twisted. Others whispered prices like gamblers, feed, wages, how much work she could do. Nobody stepped forward. The silence grew heavy enough that even the cicadas stopped. At the edge of the crowd, a tall rider dismounted. He moved with the slow certainty of someone who had learned to waste neither time nor words. His name was Caleb Wren, a ranch hand from the northern range, known mostly for paying his debts and riding alone. He had been on his way to buy salt and gun oil when he saw the gathering. Something in the way the people stared, half curious, half ashamed, made him pause. He had seen that look before, years ago in another town when a mob had decided a man was guilty because he looked like someone they feared. The sheriff barked again, asking who would take the prisoner for a week's work in exchange for the fine. Half the usual, he added, trying to make it sound like a bargain. Laughter rippled but no one moved. Caleb's horse stamped, tossing its head. The girl's gaze slid toward the sound. For the first time, she seemed to notice someone beyond the ring of strangers. Caleb met her eyes. He saw no plea there, only a kind of patience that felt older than the town itself. He stepped forward. The crowd parted the way it does when someone breaks an unspoken rule. The sheriff smirked. You volunteering, Wren? Didn't think you were the charitable type. Caleb said nothing. He reached into his coat, took out a silver dollar, and laid it on the edge of the platform. I'll see she works honest and comes back in a week, he said. And she'll be fed. The sheriff looked ready to argue, but the faces around him had changed. The show was over, and the people wanted to go back to their chores. He shrugged and cut the bindings from the girl's wrists. She's yours to supervise, he said. Caleb didn't like the word but said nothing. He offered his hand. She didn't take it at first, then slowly let him help her down from the boards. Her skin was cold despite the heat. They left town under the watching eyes of the crowd. When they reached the open road, the wind carried the smell of sage and dry earth. Ayanna walked beside his horse, silent. Caleb kept a few steps ahead, unsure what to say. Finally, he spoke without looking back. You got a place to go after this? She shook her head. Her English was halting when she answered. No place here. You got family. Her pause was long enough that he almost didn't expect an answer. Far mountains, she said. Too far. Now. They made camp near a dry creek bed where the cottonwoods threw long shadows. Caleb untied his bedroll, offered her coffee, and gave her space. When she sat apart, watching the stars rise, he thought about how easy it was for a crowd to strip someone of a name. He had seen it done to Mexicans, to Chinese laborers, to anyone who didn't belong to the narrow world the settlers imagined for themselves. As the fire crackled, he asked softly, You steal that horse? She looked up at him, eyes catching the firelight. No. He nodded once. Didn't think so. Silence stretched again, not uncomfortable now but steady. She told him, in short sentences, how her small band had been pushed south after the army built a post near their valley. They had been promised land, instead, they were fenced out. She had gone to town to trade a woven belt for flour. Someone's horse went missing that same morning, and blame needed a direction. Caleb listened without interrupting. When dawn came, they rode to his cabin in the foothills, a rough structure surrounded by open grass and the whisper of distant cattle. He showed her the well, the shed, the corral. You can stay here till the week's out, he said. Plenty to mend if you're willing. She nodded. I work. Over the next days, the rhythm of chores took hold. She fetched water, patched a torn blanket, and helped drive strays back to the corral. Caleb kept to himself, though he found himself watching her with a respect that surprised him. She was precise in her movements, patient even when he saw the bruises left by the sheriff's rope. One evening, as he mended a fence line, he heard her humming in a low voice, the tune rising and falling like the wind. On the fourth night, riders came, 2 men from town, one of them the deputy. They claimed the sheriff wanted the girl back early. Rumors had spread that she wasn't just a thief but a spy for raiding bands. Caleb stood in the doorway, his rifle across his arms. She's under my charge till the week's done, he said evenly. The deputy smirked. Laws changed. Caleb didn't move. You tell the sheriff he can come himself. The men hesitated. Something in his tone made them back off, muttering threats. When they left, Ayanna emerged from the corner where she'd been standing, eyes wide. They come again, she said quietly. Maybe with more. He knew she was right. The frontier had long memories for imagined wrongs. He packed a small saddlebag with food, a blanket, and the silver dollar still unspent. You'll ride out tonight, he said. Take my bay horse. Follow the ridge north till the land opens. There's a mission past the river, they'll take you in. She looked at him for a long time, then shook her head. You come. He hesitated. The ranch was all he had, though it was barely enough to live on. But the thought of her being dragged back to that platform made the choice simple. All right, he said finally. They rode under the stars, the world reduced to hoofbeats and the whisper of wind through mesquite. By dawn they reached the river, a wide ribbon of water glinting between willows. Caleb helped her cross, the current tugging at their legs. On the far bank, the air smelled of wet earth and sage. They rested there, the sun rising behind them. Ayanna turned toward him. Why you help me? He thought for a long time before answering. Because someone should have. She studied his face, then nodded once. Then I remember. Hoofbeats echoed behind them, distant but coming fast. Caleb drew his rifle, scanning the ridge. Dust plumes marked 3 riders. Go, he said. She hesitated, then took the reins and urged the horse into the trees. He stood his ground, waiting until the riders came into view. The deputy called out, Where's the girl? Wren. Gone, Caleb said. She's property of the county. She's a free woman, he answered. The deputy's face hardened. That's not what the papers say. Then the papers are wrong. They circled him, shouting threats. Caleb fired once into the air. The sound cracked across the valley. Turn around, he said. You can tell the sheriff the week's done. Something in his voice, or maybe the knowledge that the land beyond the river wasn't theirs to claim, made them hesitate. Finally they turned back, cursing. When the dust settled, he lowered the rifle and sat on a rock, the adrenaline fading. Across the river, Ayanna watched from between the trees. When she saw the riders retreat, she stepped out and raised a hand in silent thanks. Then she disappeared into the shadows, the sound of her horse fading into the hills. Caleb stayed by the river until the sun was high. He knew he couldn't go back to town, word would travel fast. But he also knew the land northward was wide and empty, full of places where a man could start over. He filled his canteen, shouldered his saddle, and began to walk upstream. Days later, when he reached the high ridge where the world fell away in golden plains, he thought he heard singing on the wind, a faint thread of that same tune she had hummed by his fire. He smiled, though no one was there to see it. The sky was enormous, the kind that made a man feel both small and part of something vast. He kept walking toward it, the sound fading, the horizon opening like a promise that maybe, just maybe, the West could learn to forgive itself.